we thought what would be good in this module was to kind of put together all of the components for you. So again, the three components of validation are generating traffic, communicating your idea, and measuring interest. And in this module, I'll walk through a real life example of an idea that I worked on for a couple of months and how I incorporated each of these kind of components in it. Background on the idea, and I think this will kind of like help people kind of understand what I was working on. So the name of I hesitate to call it a startup, but the name of the project was called Single Shift. And this is when I had just moved to Singapore, was looking for some ideas to work on, and I had a conversation with a friend of mine who owned a couple of restaurants. And in typical fashion, I was asking him, what are the biggest problems that restaurants face? And I was expecting things like financing and ordering products and that kind of stuff. And what he immediately said was finding people to work at the restaurant, finding reliable people, finding people when he needed it, and that kind of stuff. Pretty quickly was like, oh, I wonder if I can kind of solve that with a two-sided marketplace. And, two-sided marketplaces were quite prevalent and kind of popular at the time. And so my version of this for solving it for my friend was basically, let's on one side get a bunch of businesses who need part-time workers. And so people who can, I don't know, wash dishes for them, serve at the restaurant, work at a cafe, that kind of stuff. And so one side there's businesses, and then there's another side, which is people who want to work part-time at these places. And so I think traditionally this is a lot of like university students or young people or recent graduates, but you kind of never know. And so I wanted to kind of get these two groups of people together and then be able to kind of match them. So if my friend was running a restaurant and let's say it was Wednesday and they needed to be able to find somebody to fill a shift on Friday because, I don't know, one of the regulars kind of dropped out or they needed a little extra help, I wanted to make a product where they could post that job onto a platform. It would get pushed out to a bunch of people who are interested in these kinds of works. And then somebody could indicate that they want to work at that place and at that time and for that amount of money and that kind of thing. And the platform would put them together. And so we would fill shifts. And the whole reason that I called it Single Shift was because it was based around kind of like one single shift. So you don't have to work for more than this. It's just everything's built around this kind of like one atomic shift. And so we called it Single Shift. I had just had a conversation with my friend who talked about this problem. I thought the idea was kind of interesting. I was like, oh, I feel like I know exactly how to kind of put this together, but I didn't really know if it would work. And look, I didn't know if other businesses had this problem or just my friend did. I didn't know what type of businesses really needed this. I didn't know what type of people might want to work at these jobs. And so I wanted to validate the idea like probably a lot of you are doing now. If you're thinking, hey, Hsu Ken, you started a couple companies, you sold some companies, that kind of stuff. Do you even bother with validation? Absolutely, 100%. Not only do I bother with validation, I feel like I spend more time on validation than I ever have before, just because opportunity cost is high for me. There's a lot of things that I could be doing, and I want to make sure that I'm working on a problem that is important, and I want to figure that out before I kind of like do a bunch of other stuff. So if you're thinking, hey, this is a lot of kind of like theory, do people actually do this stuff? This whole course has basically been built on kind of like the stuff that I've done, and I'll walk you through how I did it in this case. First component here is generating traffic. And as I go through this example, remember that I have to do it for both sides. And so when you're working on a two-sided marketplace, you're actually validating kind of both sides. For most of you, if you're working on not a two-sided marketplace, you may only have to do one. But since in this example, I had to do it for two sides, I'm going to share kind of like both sides of how I did it. I also think it's kind of useful for people so they can kind of see different parts of this. Okay, so for generating traffic for consumers, which are people who are going to work on this platform, I primarily bought ads through Instagram and Facebook ads. And at first, I didn't do any kind of like demographic kind of like targeting. So I didn't target young people. I did everybody. And again, I thought it was going to be young people, but I wanted to kind of like see if I was right. So I targeted everybody, and I bought Instagram and Facebook ads for relatively cheap. I mean, I think I was spending maybe kind of like $20 to like $50 a week. And I think I could have done it for less than that. But that was my way of generating traffic, was buy ads and then get this in front of people. Okay, on the business side, which is I think a little bit kind of like more interesting or nuanced, I could have bought ads for businesses. And in fact, I did try to do that. But what I found was that it's very hard to target businesses from a demographic standpoint, right? So it's like, I don't know, are business owners typically older than 30? I mean, maybe in probably a lot of cases, but like not always. And there's going to be a lot of noise. And so I actually did buy ads, but it didn't work very well because it was hard to kind of like target. I also tried Google ads. And so I thought maybe people were searching for part-time workers and that kind of stuff through Google. And so I bought some ads for that. Turns out that people don't really search for part-timers that much. They're often asking, business owners will often ask their friends and post in different places, but rarely are they like typing it into Google, although a few people did, but it didn't seem kind of like a good source of it. The thing that eventually worked for me for businesses and generating traffic was I just started emailing and WhatsApp businesses. Um, After looking at job postings. So there's a lot of like job boards that are looking for people to work at restaurants, to work at cafes, this kind of stuff. Some of them are part time, some of them are kind of like full time. But I just went through these job boards, and oftentimes on the job listing is somebody's email. And so I just went through all of these job boards and job listings, and I would just take people's emails and WhatsApp numbers, and I would just message them. And I knew they were trying to fill a position because they put a job posting up. And so I would message them and I would email them and say, hey, I noticed that you were looking for a server or a dishwasher or something. I run this platform. I've got a bunch of people on it. Like, do you want me to help you out? And, at the time I kind of told them like, hey, I'll kind of do it for free, or I'll charge you $10 per whatever. But like, only if somebody actually shows up will you pay me. And so that was kind of the thing. But anyway, I generated traffic. And the thing that kind of worked here is people were looking for people who owned restaurants and businesses that were my target, were posting jobs on a job platform. I went and got all of that information, email messaged them, and then that turned out to work pretty well. Another thing I did was a lot of, most restaurants have contact information on their Google Maps. And so I just went through Google Maps and like randomly found places, added them all to a spreadsheet, and then again, just contacted them. For the first component, which is generating traffic for consumers, it was mainly Instagram and Facebook ads. That seemed to work pretty well right off the bat. For businesses, I went through kind of a bunch of different iterations, but the primary thing that eventually worked was just going on job boards, looking for people who were already looking to fill jobs, and then just messaging and emailing them. So that's what worked for generating traffic. Okay, the second component of the three components for validation is communicating your idea. For consumers, as I said, ads were the thing that kind of worked, and ads is also one way to communicate your idea. And I didn't have that much room to kind of like share, and I share some of the ads here, and you can see them here. But I didn't have a lot of room, and so I just mainly had like a picture, a headline, and a short description, and you can kind of like see what those ads are. The first ones that I started out with, the title for the ads was "Find Food and Beverage Work That Fits You." And then I had an image of a person working at there. I had an image of a fake app that like I never built. And then the description in the ad was restaurants and cafes push shifts. They need to fill. You choose the ones you want. And there was a learn more call to action. That's where I kind of like started out. And so even in just that ad, you can see how I kind of communicate the idea just from that standpoint. So I communicate the idea through ads. I also created a landing page. You can see it here. The headline for the landing page, at least this version of it, there was many versions of it. I'll cover how to kind of iterate in a different module, but at least this version of it, the headline is work when you want, earn what you need. And then the description is earn money picking up available shifts at restaurants, cafes, and events right from your phone. And then I have some sections on why you should work at single shift, and what you should do to get started, and a button and that kind of stuff. Communicating the idea a little bit more, showing people things visually, and also kind of like talking about it. So two ways that I communicated my idea to consumers: first through an ad, then through a landing page. Okay, and then for businesses, I tried ads, and so there were some of those. Most of it came through email and message. I also had a landing page for that. And then I also had some phone calls too. So I would often kind of like talk to these businesses. They wanted to know who I was. And so communicating for businesses was much more kind of like, as I mentioned before, progressive learning and slowly kind of showing people. So maybe somebody would see an ad, maybe somebody would see an email message to me. Maybe they would click through, look at my landing page, learn a little bit more. And if they were interested, get on a phone call with me and we would talk about it. So businesses really were kind of like multi-touch points to kind of communicate your idea. Consumers, ads, landing page kind of didn't have to do as much work here. Okay, so the third component in this example is measure interest. And so the way that I measured interest for single shift was on the consumer side, I had a sign up form. So on the landing page, you click learn more. I had created a sign up form. The sign up form had things like how much experience did you have, places that you worked, kind of like name, phone number, work eligibility. I kind of asked a fair number of things. And the reason why I asked a fair number of questions was two reasons. One, I wanted to know who was signing up and like what these people were like. So are they people that have never worked at these jobs before? Have they worked at these jobs before? And they're looking to pick up some extra things. And so I wanted to ask a little bit more information. I also purposely kind of made the form a little bit long just to see like how badly they wanted the jobs. A lot of people will just add their email, but not everybody will kind of fill out kind of like some work history and that kind of stuff. Now we can debate whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, but I felt like that was something that I wanted to do, and I wanted to make the form a little bit harder. So I put that in there. So I would get better information, and then I would see if people really wanted to do this or not. The other thing that I did too was, and I always thought this was quite clever, is I told people that I needed to interview them in order to be allowed onto the platform. So, I would tell people, hey, I don't allow just everybody on here. I need to interview you in order to kind of like allow you to be on. And so please set up a kind of 15-minute interview with me. And I use Calendly, but you can use any other thing. And I'll onboard you. And then in the onboarding process, I was able to kind of ask them a lot of questions about their background, and then they could ask questions about me, which was another way that I could kind of communicate my idea. Some people are probably asking, it's like, okay, well, you're asking people to do an interview and you didn't actually have a product. Yeah, I get it, but like I intended to eventually kind of like build it. And honestly, nobody ever complained. Not a single person kind of complains. I often would tell them that I was like building it now, and they were excited and they would kind of like want to do that. So no harm, no foul there. For businesses that they send me a shift, I often would be like, oh, we're kind of like full this time or something like that. Or, I would try to kind of find them somebody. I was doing interviews at the time, and I would just try to kind of manually kind of like hook them up. But in reality, I actually focused on the consumer side first, built up kind of like a list of people, then was working on the business side. So by the time I was asking people to send me shifts, I had a fair number of kind of like consumers signed up who I could kind of like send it to. But even if you don't, it's totally okay. I think sometimes people are kind of like sometimes shy about kind of overselling what they have right now, which is something that I think is interesting, because I think in San Francisco, that is not a worry that anybody has. The main thing they want to figure out is like, are people serious about my idea or not? And then how do I kind of set up cases to be able to measure that? But the main part with interviews, as related to kind of measure interest, is if you are reasonably serious about being a part of the platform, you would sign up for this interview, and you would get on the phone with me, and you would kind of like do that. If you were just like, yeah, whatever, I don't really care about this platform that much, you probably wouldn't do it. And so again, I like kind of made it a little bit harder, just so that to see how badly people wanted it and how serious people kind of like took it. And so interviews was a part of this. So consumers, I would have them sign up. And then for the people that signed up, I would ask them to schedule a call with me, 15 minutes. We do this interview. And then that would be kind of like my like funnel for interest, and to kind of see how many people did it. So again, I could have just had a sign up form, give me your email, but I wanted to go a little bit further. I wanted to kind of see how badly people wanted it. And then I wanted an opportunity to talk to people. And look, I probably lost some signups because my sign up form was a little bit longer, and I probably, not everybody who signed up was willing to do an interview, but I got a pretty good sense that, hey, is there enough people here that take this seriously enough to kind of do those things? And so that's what I did for consumers. On the business side, I also had a sign up form, but if I'm being honest, most businesses didn't want to just fill out the sign up form, especially since I was reaching out to them on WhatsApp. I felt a little silly kind of being like reaching out to somebody on WhatsApp and being like, hey, can you fill out this form? Which is totally okay if that's the case, but I just felt a little silly. And so what I ended up doing was I would talk to them on WhatsApp. And sometimes they would get on a call with them. And again, if they got on a call with me, that's another measure of interest. And the real test was, do they send me a shift or not? And so I would always end the call. I would always end the WhatsApp messages just like, hey, you should just try us out. send me the next time that you have a shift that you need filled and that you need somebody to kind of work on. And that was my ultimate gauge. If they would give me a shift, then I know they are serious. And so everything that I did and on the entire funnel that I put together with it was just to like drive people to give me a shift. And that was the ultimate kind of like measure of interest, most valuable, deepest one for me. So for consumers, the most valuable measure of interest was interviews. And for businesses, it was whether they send me a shift or not. And so, again, a little bit deeper to kind of go through. Worst case scenario, like very few people sign up. Nobody wants to sign up for an interview. And then at that point, I'm like, okay, do people not care about this enough? Or at least I've done a poor job of communicating this idea to them such that they don't want to do it. And similarly for businesses, lots of people can sign up. Maybe they get on phone calls with me, but if nobody sends me a shift, then I either haven't done a good job of communicating this or people aren't that interested. And so again, those were the ultimate kind of like things. Fortunately for both of these, people did sign up for interviews, actually quite a lot. I think I did like 92 interviews or something like that. I think I got like maybe like a couple thousand signups in the end for this. And maybe out of the first couple hundred signups, I got about 92 interviews. And then businesses started sending me shifts. And so I thought that was kind of like a reasonable kind of like measure of interest that this idea kind of like might be onto something. And again, as I kind of started doing this, I did a lot of iterations around kind of like how I set up the interviews and how I did the ads and that kind of stuff. And similar for businesses. And I learned quite a lot. The funnel that I ended up setting up was for consumers. I did ads. I saw if they would click on the ads, drove them to a landing page that explains more about my product and the website. On that website, there was a sign up form. The sign up form was had quite a lot of questions into it. If they signed up, I would contact them, ask them to get on an interview. And so you could see this whole kind of like funnel of like, okay, ad, landing page, sign up into interview. So that was my funnel. That's how I kind of measured interest. And then for businesses, it was a lot of cold outreach with WhatsApp or kind of like text message or sometimes kind of cold calls. And then I would see if they would send me a shift. And so that's how I measured interest. So again, kind of like those are the three components, right? Generating traffic, communicating your idea, and measure interest. And so, yeah, this worked pretty well for me. I think it's a common funnel that a lot of people can use. And this is kind of the initial setup, and I'll talk more about kind of like what to do once you kind of get this set up.